Hey class, ready for some more Wishtree? We just left off last time with Red breaking the rule. We need to figure out what happens. So I didn't really dress up today. I'm just in my workout gear. I was doing my boxings. Workouts, pretty fun. I do it with my wife every day, and we're 5 out of 7 days a week, and we learn these like cool punches. So we do like a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, and then we started learning some dips today. So I'm getting fit. I hope you guys are exercising and getting fit too. But let's continue and figure out what Red did during his rule breaking. So what happened? Chapter 30, page 127. The animals gaped at me in astonishment. Even the youngest babies knew about the don't talk to people rule. Bango darted to my top branch. Red, she cried in a strangled whisper. You can't... Oh, but I can, I said. What have I got to lose? But, as I was saying, I returned my attention to Stephen and Samar. They were staring at me, jaws dropped, eyes wide. As frozen as Flash had been not long ago. We're dreaming, Stephen murmured. Right? At the same time, Samar asked, Is that possible? Pinch me, Stephen said. Samar complied. Definitely felt that, Stephen reported. Maybe it was a dream pinch, Samar suggested. Excuse me, I interrupted. I have 216 rings worth of wisdom to convey, and not much time. Stephen reached for Samar's hand. If it's a dream, he said, at least it's a cool one. And so I began. So imagine you were just hanging out by a tree, and all of a sudden it started talking to you, and it said, stop, don't go. And then just started talking to you. I would be like, what's happening? I would be pinching myself too, like, it's gotta be a dream. How would you react if a tree started talking to you? Pretty crazy to think about. Alright, chapter 31. I haven't always been a Wishtree. It happened in 1848, long before I was surrounded by concrete and cars, when I was just a few decades old. Still a youngster by Red Oak standards. No longer a lanky sapling. I was solid and strong, but not anchored to the earth the way I am now. So he's talking to Samar and Stephen. So imagine this is what his story is to them. And they're still like... This was a time, like many other times, when hungry, desperate people sailed on crowded boats to settle here. Many of them ended up, as they always seem to, in my neighborhood. The blue and green houses were brown then, and filled to overflowing new arrivals. Sometimes the newcomers were welcome. Sometimes they were not. But still they came, hoping and wishing, as people always do. One of the new residents was a young Irish girl named Maeve. She voyaged across the Atlantic with her 19-year-old brother, who died of dysentery during the trip. Their mother had passed away shortly after Maeve was born. Their father when the children were 9 and 12. It's a rough life. Maeve was solid and plain, but when she smiled, it was like sunshine peeking through the clouds. She had a deep laugh, and her hair was as brilliantly red as my finest autumn attire. 16, alone and penniless, Maeve shared a tiny room with 5 other immigrants. She worked night and day, cleaning and cooking and doing whatever she could to stay alive. So, a lot of different people from Europe came over at this time, and they were called immigrants, and they came over and tried to settle and start a new land over on the East Coast. It's a huge part of our history, so it's kind of cool, and you can try to imagine living in a small room or a small house with like 5 other people, and they're all strangers. That'd be kind of weird. Maeve soon discovered she was gifted at caring for the sick. She had no special knowledge, no secret remedies, but she was kind and patient, and she knew how to soothe a fevered brow with a cold cloth as well as anyone. What she didn't know, she was willing to learn. As time passed and word grew of Maeve's abilities, people brought her their sick piglets, and their lame horses, their coughing children, and fretful babies. Always she explained that she wasn't sure she could help, but since people in the neighborhood were too poor to go to a doctor, they turned to Maeve. So also, they didn't have a lot of money then either, so they had to, what were you going to do if you got sick? So they were desperate, and Maeve was there to help them. We'll find out who Maeve is in a little bit. And since people believed she could help them get better, Maeve tried to live up to their hopes. When she succeeded, and even when she didn't, patients and their families would leave small tokens for her. A whittled figurine of a bird, a hairpin, half loaf of bread. Once someone even left a leather-covered journal with a tiny silver key that opened its lock. Tiny silver key. That sounds familiar. And all these little things that people are leaving kind of reminds me of Bongo and how she finds all the little things, including a key. When Maeve was out tending to someone who was sick, people took to leaving their thank yous in my lowest hollow. It was still a fresh wound, just a couple seasons mended, but because it faced the house where Maeve roomed and not the street, it was a safe place to leave a token of gratitude. That's when I realized that hollows can be a good thing for people, not just birds and animals. Little did I know just how good. So that's the first time they used red to leave notes for somebody, and it was for someone who did something kind. The years passed, and Maeve became as connected to the neighborhood as I was. Even as the newcomers from other lands added to their music and food and language to our little part of the world. No matter where people were from, Maeve cared for them as best she could. I grew tougher and my older limbs less pliable, my shadow longer, more trees and shrubs joined me. But there was plenty of sun for all of us, and we never wanted for water. I'd hosted many families by then, mice and chipmunks in particular. My closest confidant was a young gray squirrel named Squibbles. All squirrel names begin with the letters S-Q-U. There's Squibbles. Super cute. Squibbles was especially fond of Maeve, who often fed the little squirrel table scraps. Privately, Squibbles and I worried about Maeve. Along the way, Maeve had seen a suitor or two, but nothing much came from those flirtations. She had friends aplenty and work to do from dusk till dawn. From dawn till dusk. Still, she seemed lonely. Sometimes Maeve would sit on the porch steps, watching happy families stroll past, and her eyes would well up with tears. At night she'd gaze up at the open upstairs window, and her sighs would float to us on the breeze, melancholy as the call of a morning dove. Often Maeve would sit at the base of my trunk and write in her journal. Now and then she'd read passages out loud. She spoke about the Irish countryside fading into fog. She spoke about her family she'd lost. She spoke about her secret hopes and fears and longings. She had love to give, and no one to give it to. Maeve adored early mornings, when the world was bathed in mist and the sun was still a promise. She would lean against my trunk and close her eyes and hum a tune from her childhood. One day, first day of May, Maeve joined me at dawn. To my surprise, she reached up to my lowest branch bough and gently tied a scrap of blue striped fabric in a careful knot. "I wish," she whispered, "for someone to love with all my heart." That was my first wish and the beginning of many more. Do you think her wish will come true? And who is this Maeve? We'll find out more. That was chapter 32. I think I forgot to announce it. So we'll read chapters 33 and all of those, and we got to get this done soon because we will be reading the one and only Bob starting next week. So I get the book next week, so we need to get Wishtree done so we can read that. I hope you guys all enjoyed that reading, and I will see you tomorrow with another book, or another reading, another chapter. There you go.